Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind troubled with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems, the ones you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. Let my voice wash over you at a comfortable volume and allow yourself to be distracted from the stresses and worries that play on your mind. Whether you need help falling asleep or going back to sleep in the middle of the night, you can trust me to keep you company and help you to wake up tomorrow in a rested state. It is possible that Sleepy Time Tales won't work for you the first night you listen to it, and you might need to give it a few nights to get used to it, but I believe it will be well worth your while. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So settle down, relax, and allow yourself to get lost in my telling of tonight's story. Before we get on with tonight's story, I'd like to ask for a few minutes of your time. Sleepy Time Tales is a listener-supported podcast. I can only keep it going and pay for the services and tools that I use and justify the time that I spend on it thanks to the generosity of listeners like you. I even mentioned last week that I have had a couple of advertising opportunities pop up recently, and I've decided not to take them because I feel that my audience isn't that big, so I don't want to alienate the people that I do have listening with something that they may not enjoy listening to. But then I do need to ask that if you find Sleepy Time Tales useful and it helps you to get a restful night, and you would like to help me keep it going out to thousands of insomniacs just like you, please consider supporting it on the Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. This is monthly support that helps me keep the lights on and can also get you fun bonuses based on the level at which you contribute. So go along there, take a look, and sign up if you can. And of course, monthly is a big ask, in which case you can make once-off tips to the tip jar on the website. And if you would like to help Sleepy Time Tales without having to do so financially, you can just tell people about it. Spread the word, and if there's anyone you know who needs some help sleeping, just tell them about Sleepy Time Tales and see how it goes. And that's enough of that. Let's get to romance and the fall of empire, and thank you for your time. We pick up again with The Last Man by Mary Shelley. After the lapse of a few weeks, we left Dunkeld. Idris and her mother returned immediately to Windsor, while Adrian and I, followed by slow journeys and frequent stoppages occasioned by his continued weakness. As we traversed the various counties of fertile England, all bore an exhilarating appearance to my companion, who had been so long secluded by disease from the enjoyment of weather and scenery. We passed through busy towns and cultivated plains. The husbandmen were getting in their plenteous harvests, and the women and children, occupied by light, rustic toils, formed groups of happy, healthy persons, the very sight of whom carried cheerfulness to the heart. One evening, quitting our inn, we strolled down a shady lane, then up a grassy slope, till we came to an eminence that commanded an extensive view of hill and dale, meandering rivers, dark woods, and shining villages. The sun was setting, and the clouds, straying like new-shorn sheep through the vast fields of sky, received the golden color of his parting beams. The distant uplands shone out, and the busy hum of evening came, harmonized by distance on our ear. Adrian, who felt all the fresh spirit infused by returning health, clasped his hands in delight, and exclaimed with transport, "O happy earth, and happy inhabitants of earth! A stately palace has God built for you, O man, and worthy are you of your dwelling. Behold the verdant carpet spread at our feet and the azure canopy above, the fields of earth which generate and nurture all things, and the track of heaven which contains and clasps all things. Now, at this evening hour, at the period of repose and reflection, methinks all hearts breathe one hymn of love and thanksgiving, and we, like priests of old on the mountain tops, give a voice to their sentiment. Assuredly, a most benignant power builds up in the majestic fabric we inhabit, and framed by the laws by which it endures. If mere existence and not happiness had been the final end of our being, what need of the profuse luxuries which we enjoy? Why should our dwelling place be so lovely, and why should the instincts of nature minister pleasurable sensations? The very sustaining of our animal machine is made delightful, and our sustenance, the fruits of the field, is painted with transcendent hues, imbued with grateful odors and palatable to our taste. Why should this be if he were not good? We need houses to protect us from the seasons, and behold the materials with which we are provided, the growth of trees with their dormant of leaves, while rocks of stone piled above the plains variegate the prospect with their pleasant irregularity. Nor are outward objects alone in the receptacles of the spirit of good. Look into the mind of man where wisdom reigns enthroned, where imagination, the painter, sits with his pencil dipped in hues lovelier than those of sunset, adorning the familiar life with glowing tints. What a noble boon, worthy of the giver, is the imagination. It takes from reality its leaden hue. It envelopes all thought and sensation in a radiant veil, and with the hand of beauty beckons us from the sterile seas of life to gardens and bowers and glades of bliss. And is not love a gift of the divinity, love in her child hope, which can bestow wealth on poverty, strength on the weak, and happiness on the sorrowing? My lot has not been fortunate. I have consorted long with grief, entered the gloomy labyrinth of madness, and emerged but half alive. Yet I thank God that I have lived. I thank God that I beheld his throne, the heavens and earth, his footstool. I'm glad that I've seen the changes of his day, to behold the sun, fountain of light, and the gentle pilgrim moon, to have seen the fire-bearing flowers of the sky and the flowery stars of earth, to have witnessed the sowing and the harvest. I'm glad that I have loved and have experienced the sympathetic joy and sorrow with my fellow creatures. I'm glad now to feel the current of thought flow through my mind, as the blood through the articulations of my frame. Mere existence is pleasure, and I thank God that I live. And all ye happy nurslings of Mother Earth, do ye not echo my words? Ye who are linked by the affectionate ties of nature, companions, friends, lovers, fathers, who toil with joy for their offspring. Women who, while gazing on the living forms of their children, forget the pains of maternity. Children who neither toil nor spin, but love and are loved. Oh, that death and sickness were banished from our earthly home, that hatred, tyranny, and fear could no longer make their lair in the human heart, that each man might find a brother in his fellow and a nest of repose amid the white plains of his inheritance, that the source of tears were dry and that lips might no longer form expressions of sorrow. Sleeping thus under the beneficent eye of heaven, can evil visit thee, O earth, or grief cradle to their graves thy luckless children? Whisper it or not, let the demons hear and rejoice. The choice is with us, let us will it, and our habitation becomes a paradise. For the will of man is omnipotent, blunting the arrows of death, soothing the bed of disease and wiping away the tears of agony. And what is each human being worth, if he do not put forth his strength to aid his fellow creatures? My soul is a fading spark, my nature frail as a spent wave, but I dedicate all of intellect and strength that remains to me to that one work, and take upon me the task as far as I am able of bestowing blessings on my fellow men. His voice trembled, his eyes were cast up, his hands clasped, and his fragile person was bent, as it were, with excess of emotion. The spirit of life seemed to linger in his form as a dying flame on an altar flickers on the embers of an accepted sacrifice. Chapter 5. When we arrived at Windsor, I found that Raymond and Perdita had departed for the continent. I took possession of my sister's cottage and blessed myself that I lived within view of Windsor Castle. It was a curious fact that at this period, when by the marriage of Perdita I was allied to one of the richest individuals in England, and was bound by the most intimate friendship to its chiefest noble, I experienced the greatest excess poverty that I had ever known. My knowledge of the worldly principles of Lord Raymond would have ever prevented me from applying to him, however deep my distress might have been. It was in vain that I repeated myself with regard to Adrian, that his purse was open to me, that one in soul as we were, our fortunes ought to be common. I could never, while with him, think of his bounty as a remedy to my poverty, and I even put aside hastily his offers of supplies, assuring him of a falsehood that I needed them not. How could I say to this generous being, "Maintain me in idleness. You who have dedicated your powers of mind and fortune to the benefit of your species, shall you so misdirect your exertions as to support in uselessness the strong and healthy and capable?" And yet I dared not request him to use his influence that I might obtain an honourable provision for myself, for then I should have been obliged to leave Windsor. I hovered forever around the walls of its castle, beneath its enshadowing thickets. My sole companions were my books and my loving thoughts. I studied the wisdom of the ancients and gazed on the happy walls that sheltered the beloved of my soul. My mind was nevertheless idle. I pored over the poetry of old times. I studied the metaphysics of Plato and Berkeley. I read the histories of Greece and Rome and of England's former periods. And I watched the movements of the lady of my heart. At night I could see her shadow on the walls of her apartment. By day I viewed her in a flower garden, or riding in the park with her usual companions. Methought the charm would be broken if I was seen, but I heard the music of her voice and was happy. I gave to each heroine of whom I read her beauty and matchless excellences. Such was Antigone when she guided the blind Oedipus to the grove of Eumenides, and discharged the funeral rite of Polynices. Such was Miranda in the unvisited cave of Prospero. Such Haidee on the sands of the Ionian island. I was mad with excess of passionate devotion, but pride, tameless as fire, invested my nature, and prevented me from betraying myself by word or look. In the meantime, while I thus pampered myself with rich mental repasts, a peasant would have disdained my scanty fare, which I sometimes robbed from the squirrels of the forest. I was, I own, often tempted to recur to the lawless feats of my boyhood, and knock down the almost tame pheasants that perched upon the trees, and bent their bright eyes on me. But they were the property of Adrian, the nurslings of Idris, and so, although my imagination, rendered sensual by privation, made me think that they would better become the spit in my kitchen than the green leaves of the forest. Nevertheless, I checked my haughty will and did not eat, but supped upon sentiment, and dreamt vainly of such morsels sweet as I might not waking attain. But at this period, the whole scheme of my existence was about to change. The orphan and neglected son of Verney was on the eve of being linked to the mechanism of society by a golden chain. and to enter into all the duties and affections of life. Miracles were to be wrought in my favor, the machine of social life pushed with vast effort backward. Attend, O reader, while I narrate this tale of wonders. One day, as Adrian and Idris were riding through the forest with their mother and accustomed companions, Idris, drawing her brother aside from the rest of the cavalcade, suddenly asked him what has become of his friend Lionel Verney. "Even from this spot," replied Adrian, pointing to my sister's cottage, "you can see his dwelling." "Indeed," said Idris. "And why, if he be so near, does he not come to see us and make one of our society?" "I often visit him," replied Adrian, "but you may easily guess the motives which prevent him from coming where his presence may annoy any one among us." "I do guess, then," said Idris, "and such as they are, I would not venture to combat them. Tell me, however, in what way he passes his time. What is he doing and thinking in his cottage retreat?" "Nay, my sweet sister," replied Adrian, "you ask me more than I can well answer. But if you feel interest in him, why not visit him? He will feel highly honored, and thus you may repay a part of the obligation I owe him, and compensate for the injuries fortune has done him." "I will most readily accompany you to his abode," said the lady. "Not that I wish that either of us should unburthen ourselves of our debt, which being no less than your life, must remain unpayable ever. But let us go. Tomorrow we'll arrange to ride out together, and proceeding towards that part of the forest, call upon him." The next evening, therefore, though the autumnal change had brought on cold and rain, Adrian and Idris entered my cottage. They found me curious-like, feasting on sorry fruits for supper, but they brought gifts richer than the golden bribes of the Sabines, nor could I refuse invaluable store of friendship and delight which they bestowed. Surely the glorious twins of Latona were not more welcome, when in the infancy of the world they were brought forth to beautify and enlighten the sterile promontory, than were this angelic pair to my lowly dwelling and grateful heart. We sat like one family round my hearth. Our talk was on the subjects unconnected with the emotions that evidently occupied each, but we each divined the other's thoughts, and as our voices spoke of indifferent matters, our eyes, in mute language, told 1,000 things no tongue could have uttered. They left me in an hour's time. They left me happy, how unspeakably happy. It did not require the measured sounds of human language to syllable the story of my ecstasy. Idris had visited me. Idris I should see again and again see. My imagination did not wander beyond the completeness of this knowledge. I trod air. No doubt, no fear, no hope even disturbed me. I clasped with my soul the fullness of contentment, satisfied, undesiring, beatified. For many days Adrian and Idris continued to visit me thus. In this dear intercourse, love, in the guise of enthusiastic friendship, infused more and more of his omnipotent spirit. Idris felt it. Yes, divinity of the world, I read your characters in her looks and gesture. I heard your melodious voice echoed by her. You prepared for us a soft and flowery path. All gentle thoughts adorned it. Your name, O love, was not spoken, but you stood the genius of the hour, veiled in time. But no mortal hand might raise the curtain. Organs of articulate sound did not proclaim the union of our hearts, for untoward circumstance allowed no opportunity for the expression that hovered on our lips. O my pen, haste thou to write what was, before the thought of what is arrests the hand that guides thee. If I lift up my eyes and see the desert earth, and feel that those dear eyes have spent their mortal luster, and that those beauteous lips are silent. Their crimson leaves faded, forever I am mute. But you live, my Idris, even now you move before me. There was a glade, O reader, a grassy opening in the wood. The retiring trees left its velvet expanse as a temple for love. The silver Thames bounded it on one side, and a willow bending down dipped in the water its naiad hair, dishevelled by the wind's viewless hand. The oaks around were the home of a tribe of nightingales. There am I now. Idris, in youth's dear prime, is by my side. Remember, I am just 22, and 17 summers have scarcely passed over the beloved of my heart. The river, swollen by autumnal rains, deluged the lowlands, and Adrian in his favourite boat is employed in the dangerous pastime of plucking the topmost bough from a submerged oak. Are you weary of life, O Adrian, that you thus play with danger? He has obtained his prize, and he pilots his boat through the flood. Our eyes were fixed on him fearfully, but the stream carried him away from us. He was forced to land far lower down and to make a considerable circuit before he could join us. He is safe, said Idris as he leapt on shore, and waved the bow over his head in token of success. We will wait for him here. We were alone together. The sun had set. The song of the nightingales began. The evening star shone distinct in the flood of light, which was yet unfaded in the west. The blue eyes of my angelic girl were fixed on this sweet emblem of herself. How the light palpitates, she said. Which is that star's life? Its vacillating effulgence seems to say that its state, even like ours upon earth, is wavering and inconstant. It fears, methinks, and it loves. Gaze not on the star, dear generous friend, I cried. Read not love in its trembling rays. Look not upon distant worlds. Speak not of the mere imagination of a sentiment. I have long been silent. Long even to sickness I have desired to speak to you, and submit my soul, my life, my entire being to you. Look not on the star, dear love, or do, and let that eternal spark plead for me. Let it be my witness and my advocate, silent as it shines. Love is to me as light to the star, even as long as it is uneclipsed by annihilation. So long shall I love you. Veiled forever to the world's callous eye must be the transport of that moment. Still do I feel her graceful form press against my full-fraught heart. Still does sigh and pulse and breath sicken and fail at the remembrance of that first kiss. Slowly and silently we meant to meet Adrian, whom we heard approaching. I entreated Adrian to return to me after he had conducted his sister home. And that same evening, walking among the moonlit forest paths, I poured forth my whole heart, its transport and hope, to my friend. For a moment he looked disturbed. I might have foreseen this, he said. What strife will now ensue? Pardon me, Lionel, nor wonder that the expectation of contest with my mother should jar me, when else I should delightedly confess that my best hopes are fulfilled, in confiding my sister to your protection. If you do not already know it, you will soon learn the deep hate my mother bears to the name Verney. I will converse with Idris, then all that a friend can do, I will do. To her it must belong to play the lover's part, if she be capable of it. While the mother and sister were still hesitating in what manner they could best attempt to bring their mother over to their party, she, suspecting our meetings, taxed her children with them, taxed her fair daughter with deceit, and an unbecoming attachment for one whose only merit was being son of the profligate favourite of her imprudent father, and who was doubtless as worthless as he from whom he boasted his descent. The eyes of Idris flashed at this accusation. She replied, I do not deny that I love Verney. Prove to me that he is worthless, and I will never see him more. Dear madam, said Adrian, let me entreat you to see him, to cultivate his friendship. You will wonder then, as I do, at the extent of his accomplishments and the brilliancy of his talents. Pardon me, gentle reader, this is not futile vanity. Not futile, since to know that Adrian felt thus brings joy even now to my lone heart. Mad and foolish boy, exclaimed the angry lady, you have chosen with dreams and theories to overthrow my schemes for your own aggrandizement. But you shall not do the same by those I have formed for your sister. I but too well understand the fascination you both labor under, since I had the same struggle with your father, to make him cast off the parent of this youth, who had his evil propensities with the smoothness and subtlety of a viper. In those days, how often did I hear of his attractions, his widespread conquests, his wit, his refined manners. It is well when flies only are caught by such spiders' webs, but it is for the high-born and powerful to bow their necks to the flimsy yoke of these unmeaning pretensions. Were your sister indeed the insignificant person she deserves to be, I would willingly leave her to her fate, the wretched fate of the wife of a man whose very person, resembling as it does his wretched father, ought to remind you of the folly and vice it typifies. But remember, Lady Idris, it is not alone the once royal blood of England that colours your veins. You are a princess of Austria, and every life drop is akin to emperors and kings. Are you then a fit mate for an uneducated shepherd boy, whose only inheritance is his father's tarnished name? I can make but one defence, replied Idris, the same offered by my brother. See, Lionel, converse with my shepherd boy. The Countess interrupted her indignantly. Yours, she cried. And then, smoothing her impassioned features into a disdainful smile, she continued, we will talk of this another time. All I now ask, all your mother Idris requests, is that you will not see this upstart during the interval of 1 month. I dare not comply, said Idris. It would pain him too much. I have no right to play with his feelings, to accept his proffered love and then sting him with neglect. This is going too far, her mother answered, with quivering lips and eyes again instinct by anger. Nay, madam, said Adrian, unless my sister consent never to see him again, it is surely a useless torment to separate them for a month. Certainly, replied the ex-queen with bitter scorn. His love and her love, and both their childish flutterings, are to put in fit comparison with my years of hope and anxiety, with the duties of the offspring of kings, with the high and dignified conduct which one of her descent ought to pursue. But it is unworthy of me to argue and complain. Perhaps you will have the goodness to promise me not to marry during that interval. This was asked only half ironically, and Idris wondered why her mother should extort from her a solemn vow not to do what she had never dreamt of doing. But the promise was required and given. All went on cheerfully now. We met as usual, and talked without dread of our future plans. The Countess was so gentle, and even beyond her wont, amiable with her children, that they began to entertain hopes of her ultimate consent. She was too unlike them, too utterly alien to their tastes for them to find delight in her society, or in the prospect of its continuance, but it gave them pleasure to see her reconciliating and kind. Once even Adrian ventured to propose her receiving me. She refused with a smile, reminded him that for the present his sister had promised to be patient. One day, after a lapse of nearly a month, Adrian received a letter from a friend in London, requesting his immediate presence for the furtherance of some important object. Guileless himself, Adrian feared no deceit. I rode with him as far as Staines. He was in high spirit, and since I could not see Idris during his absence, he promised a speedy return. His gaiety, which was extreme, had the strange effect of awakening in me contrary feelings. A presentiment of evil hung over me. I loitered on my return. I counted the hours that must elapse before I saw Idris again. Wherefore should this be? What evil might not happen in the meantime? Might not her mother take advantage of Adrian's absence to urge her beyond her sufferance, perhaps to entrap her? I resolved, let what would befall, to see and converse with her the following day. This determination soothed me. Tomorrow, loveliest and best, hope and joy of my life, tomorrow I will see thee, fool to dream of a moment's delay. I went to rest. At past midnight I was awakened by a violent knocking. It was now deep winter. It had snowed and was still snowing. The wind whistled in the leafless trees, despoiling them of the white flakes as they fell. Its drear moaning and the continued knocking mingled wildly with my dreams. At length I was wide awake. Hastily dressing myself, I hurried to discover the cause of this disturbance, and to open the door to the unexpected visitor. Pale as the snow that showered about her, with clasped hands, Idris stood before me. "Save me," she exclaimed, and would have sunk to the ground had I not supported her. In a moment, however, she revived, and with energy, almost with violence, entreated me to saddle horses and take her away to London, to her brother, at least to save her. I had no horses. She wrung her hands. "What can I do?" she cried. "I am lost. We are both forever lost. But come with me, Lionel. Here I must not stay. We can get a chaise at the nearest post-house. Yet perhaps we have time. Come with me to save and protect me." When I heard her piteous demands, while with disordered dress, dishevelled hair, and aghast looks, she wrung her hands. The idea shot across me, is she also mad? Sweet one, and I folded her to my heart. Better repose than wander further. Rest, my beloved, I will make a fire. You are chill. Rest, she cried. Repose. You rave, Lionel. If you delay, we are lost. Come, I pray you, unless you would cast me off forever. That Idris, princely born, nursling of wealth and luxury, should have come through the tempestuous winter night from her regal abode, and standing at my lowly door conjure me to fly with her through darkness and storm, was surely a dream. Again her plaintive tones, the sight of her loveliness assured me that it was no vision. Looking timidly around, as if she feared to be overheard, she whispered, "I've discovered. Tomorrow, that is, today already, the tomorrow has come. Before dawn, foreigners, Austrians, my mother's hirelings, are to carry me off to Germany, to prison, to marriage, to anything except you and my brother. Take me away, or soon they will be here." I was frightened by her vehemence, and imagined some mistake in her incoherent tale, but I no longer hesitated to obey her. She had come by herself from the castle, 3 long miles at midnight through heavy snow. We must reach Englefield Green, 1.5 miles further before we could obtain a chaise. She told me that she had kept up her strength and courage till her arrival at my cottage, and then both failed. Now she could hardly walk. Supporting her as I did, still she lagged, and at the distance of 1/2 mile, after many stoppages, shivering fits, and half faintings, she slipped from my supporting arm on the snow, and with a torrent of tears averred that she must be taken, for that she could not proceed. I lifted her up in my arms. Her light form rested on my breast. I felt no burden, except the internal one of contrary and contending emotions. Brimming delight now invested me. Again, her chill limbs touched me as a torpedo, and I shuddered in sympathy with her pain and fright. Her head lay on my shoulder. Her breath waved my hair. Her heart beat near mine. Transport made me tremble, blinded me, annihilated me, till a suppressed groan bursting from her lips, the chattering of her teeth which she strove vainly to subdue, and all the signs of suffering she evinced, recalled me to the necessity of speed and succor. At last I said to her, "There is Englefield Green, there the inn. But if you are seen thus strangely circumstanced, dear Idris, even now your enemies may learn your flight too soon. Were it not better that I hide the chaise alone? I will put you in safety meanwhile and return to you immediately." She answered that I was right, and might do with her as I pleased. I observed the door of a small outhouse ajar. I pushed it open, and with some haste strewed about, I formed a couch for her, placing her exhausted frame on it and covering her with my cloak. I feared to leave her. She looked so wan and faint. But in a moment she reacquired animation, and with that, fear, and again she implored me not to delay. To call up the people of the inn and obtain a conveyance and horses, even though I harnessed them myself, was the work of many minutes. Minutes, each freighted with the weight of ages. I caused the chaise to advance a little, waited till the people of the inn had retired, and then made the postboy draw up the carriage to the spot where Idris, impatient and now somewhat recovered, stood waiting for me. I lifted her into the chaise. I assured her that with our 4 horses we should arrive in London before 5 o'clock, the hour when she would be sought and missed. I besought her to calm herself. A kindly shower of tears relieved her, and by degrees she related her tale of fear and peril. And I'm going to leave it there. We will pick up with that tale when we come back next time. But if you can't wait, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around bedtime story to help you get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. Good night, and sweet dreams.